in sick on our coastal inspiration.
The frustrations and political finger-pointing. And daycare dropped in Port Coquitlam.
The presence of a child care facility might have an adverse effect on the property value.
And we don't have the room to accommodate parking for 65 parents.
How 9 people at a public hearing stopped a new child care center.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening, I'm Dan Burritt. Thanks for joining us. Welcome to autumn. After a grinding wildfire season and record drought, heavy rain warnings are now blinding much of our province. Our Yasmin Gandam is in Squamish, where strong downpours are expected.
Puddles of rain and high river levels visible here in Squamish. The stormy weather brings up concerns about possible flooding after local businesses were forced to shut for weeks on end last December. Climb On in the city's downtown core was one of them.
Next thing you know, water's coming like up to the door. And then in our work chat, we're just getting photos sent of water's getting into the store now, and then they're trying to sandbag and block everything off.
Salvo says although difficult, the staff are now prepared for another unprecedented weather event.
It does take all those factors lining up to create a big enough tide to come in and flood our stores. So I think unless those factors start lining up again, we're not too concerned. Mainly just kind of bummed about the rain.
Yeah. But local officials say it was the rare combination of a storm surge and king tide that led to the catastrophic flooding last Christmas in the area.
From a flood perspective, this doesn't sort of meet that threshold for but our staff closely monitor Environment Canada and keep up to speed with all that.
The local Chamber of Commerce is advising businesses to have a flood plan in place in case of conditions changing.
Well, I think in the face of climate change, there's always a level of concern. I think every business owner and resident of most rural communities should keep that in mind of how do I put a personal plan together in order to actually mitigate and manage emergency situations.
The rain may be a nuisance, but for most residents and businesses in the area, it's a usual sight, one they aren't too concerned about, at least not yet. Yasmin Gandam, CBC News, Squamish.
Let's turn to our science and climate specialist Darius Madavi with a first look at the forecast. Still some areas that are expected to get some big downpours.
Yes, definitely. So the worst of it does seem to have passed. The atmospheric river still feeding into the south coast, but most of the moisture that it was carrying has been dumped already. What's still to come is going to be a little bit less. But they have Environment Canada has updated some of the rainfall warnings that are in place. Still some significant rainfall expected for the island, no question. But the big change comes for the Lower Mainland, where on the North Shore Mountains, some weather stations have already reported anywhere from 50 to 90 millimeters of rain just today as of this afternoon, and more is expected into tonight. So they're now warning of up to 110 millimeters for some parts of the North Shore. So here you see that atmospheric river. I'm just showing it again because it's such a fun map. So this is where we're at now. You can see it the moisture coming in, but quickly moving south as we get into late tomorrow, and that should be the last of the rain that we get. So over the next 24 hours, which is nice to be able to change this from 48 to 24, because that's when the last of the rain comes, we see that still central parts of the west coast of the island still to get some more. That's shifted south somewhat from where it was in Tofino yesterday. And then we have the some parts of the Lower Mainland still expecting some pretty significant rainfall. So here in Vancouver, just plenty more rain over the next 12 hours. So as we get into late tomorrow morning, by noon, that means most of the rain has come. So by the late afternoon, evening, we should have mostly cleared up.
Okay, Darius, thanks very much.
Thanks, Dan.
Police say a 12-year-old boy has been killed in a crash in Meadows as he rode his bike to school this morning. Meadows RCP says the youngster was cycling around 8:30 when the truck hit him at 116A Avenue and 196B Street, just west of the Golden Ears Bridge. First responders tried to save him, but he died. Police say it's a devastating loss for the community.
Our integrated collision analyst reconstructive team was on scene, so they were called out today along with serious crimes and our investigational support team. So at this point, they're collecting all evidence on scene just to ensure they get an accurate understanding of what happened.
The Pitt Meadows School District, number 42, also confirmed the boy's death. Police are asking for anyone with information to contact them. Mounties say impairment is not believed to be a factor right now. BC Ferries is again facing harsh criticism after more cancelled sailings. At one point today, there was a 7-sailing wait for people without a vehicle reservation. Mira Bain says more on the delays and the political finger-pointing.
More frustration at BC Ferries as morning sailings between Victoria and Tsawwassen were cancelled. The 7 a.m. leaving Victoria and the 9 a.m. leaving Tsawwassen were cancelled due to staff shortages.
We did have a couple of crew members call in sick on our coastal inspiration, and unfortunately our crewing processes, the way that we backfill, we just weren't able to backfill those positions as quickly as we needed to this morning.
The cancelled sailings on the coastal inspiration came as another ferry, the Spirit of Vancouver Island, was out for repair.
It certainly delays your life and puts it on hold for, one sailing cancellation means a whole day for me.
It's just vacation. I'm just making my way back and heard a lot of rumors, negative rumors about BC Ferries, but I put it to the test. Those rumors are now proven true for me.
Thought my wildest dream I'd get on the 9, crazy dream I'd get on the 11. Here I am looking at the 1, hopefully.
However, late in the day, the Spirit of Vancouver Island was brought back a day early and 3 sailings were added. BC United leader Kevin Falcon says the corporation BC Ferries should not have to pay fines for cancelled sailings, something the province plans to implement next year.
Actually, the people they should be fining are the senior executives. It should be the 4 new vice presidents they've now hired, in addition to the ones that are already there, earning between $300,000 and $460,000, that should be getting a daily fine of $7,000.
This shows the executive leadership team at BC Ferries. 8 vice presidents reporting to the CEO of BC Ferries. BC's transportation minister says he's not going to take advice from Falcon.
It was under his watch, when he was the transportation minister, that the CEO of BC Ferries got paid $1 million a year.
He also addressed the recent interruption.
We are working with the company to fix this. They have showed some progress. Getting that vessel back in service this afternoon will certainly help clear up the backlog that accumulated this morning. But we are not out of the woods yet. The company is the first to admit that.
BC Ferries also offered future travel vouchers and refunds for cancelled sailings. Mira Baines, CBC News, Victoria.
The Ferry Workers Union, meanwhile, says its members are bearing the brunt of travelers' frustrations and sometimes threats. It claims attacks against staff are on the rise, stemming from long waits and difficulties making reservations. It says a few incidents have even turned violent.
So there was a spitting incident in Swartz Bay. Our understanding there was also a parking lot incident where there was someone who parked in staff parking, a member of the public, and then when questioned, ended up making contact with a member of our union and kicking their vehicle.
BC Ferry says inappropriate behavior against its workers will not be tolerated, and employees are entitled to a violence-free workplace. It says it will contact police when it needs to. The provincial government says it hopes to better address the needs of victims of sexual violence and violent crime by updating its Crime Victims Assistance Act.
Our Crime Victims Assistance Program is funded by the very people who cause harm to others. Through the Civil Forfeiture Office, government seizes properties, money, and other assets that are the proceeds of crime. When these assets are sold, the money from that sale is used to fund these services.
If passed, the changes will expand access for benefits for grandparents and grandchildren by removing the requirement of financial dependence on the victim. The definition of witness will be expanded, and the time limit to apply for benefits will be changed from 1 year to 2. To health news now. BC's health minister says more than 500,000 COVID and flu shots have been given in just over a week. Still, about 2 million people have been invited to get vaccinated.
We have currently, over the next number of weeks, about a 37% filled rate for vaccination appointments, so there's lots of opportunity everywhere.
The first invitations went to those most at risk of severe illness, but eligibility will soon expand. British Columbians can book a vaccine appointment online or by phone once they are invited. Politics in Port Coquitlam usually doesn't get too spicy, but controversy broke out last week after a public hearing where a majority of councillors rejected a proposed daycare. Our Justin McElroy watched the 3-hour meeting and has more.
Port Coquitlam. It's a town with a well-known mayor, no actual port, and politicians that listen to their voters.
This is not a rubber stamp process. The public is listened to in this community.
So when that many people come together, I'm going to listen to them.
That was at City Council last week, with councillors explaining why they were voting no to a rezoning. Now, were they against an industrial waste plant or a giant luxury condo? No. Instead, it was a 2-story childcare meant for 65 kids by a nonprofit society that operates 3 other facilities in Metro Vancouver. But this was a new step for Port Coquitlam. They don't have any large childcare sites on neighborhood roads. Now, councillors did vote yes to the project at first and second hearings, indicating their general support. But once they heard from the public, the tide turned.
When you see this many people come out and they're this passionate and their concerns are so loud, it's hard to just blow past them.
But what exactly were those concerns? Here is a chart. The most common complaint?
We have parking issues.
We don't have the room to accommodate parking for 65 parents.
The sense of community cohesion that we have cherished will slowly erode due to parking disputes.
It's just going to be complete chaos.
Parking was cited by 6 people. Next up was the lack of sidewalks on the street as a safety concern. And at number 3,
the presence of a child care facility might have an adverse effect on the property value.
It's going to hurt our property values as well, which I don't think is fair to the residents of the street.
The property value is a significant concern for the homeowners in our neighborhood.
It'll even affect property values.
4 separate people claimed a daycare could lower property values. 3 people brought up the lack of a nearby playground for kids to go to. And 1 person said this.
When the season comes in the autumn or spring, there is the bears basically scavenging for the food, and it's not happening just in the nighttime, it's happening in the daylight, in the middle of the day. So safety issue with 20 people walking roped one to each other on the street and meeting the bear.
Parking, property values, possibilities of bears. Now, councillors didn't agree with all of the claims.
I don't believe property values are going to drop. I don't believe the bears are going to eat the children.
But that councillor still voted against the daycare. So did 4 others. And every single one of them cited the turnout at the public hearing.
We have not had that many people out at a public hearing for quite a long time. And I think that says a lot about what is taking place.
But how many people actually showed up to that public hearing in question? 9 people. Now, you can argue what this says about the public hearing process. You can argue what it says about how Port Coquitlam's political culture is normally calm. But the only thing you can say definitively, for sure, is those 5 councillors definitely valued the opinions of those 9 people. Justin McElroy, CBC News, Vancouver.
A boil water notice has now been issued in Prince Rupert after its 100-year-old water system had several breaks last night. Water gushed through streets and flooded basements yesterday. Now, while the situation has stabilized, the city's water quality remains compromised. That notice says people must boil their water vigorously for at least 1 minute, then let it cool before they use it to cook or brush their teeth. The city says it is waiting for federal funding approvals before it can update its system. Some Lytton residents are angry about what they call a lack of progress rebuilding their community more than 2 years after it was leveled by a massive fire. Dozens of people rallied along their burned main street today. The provincial government says it has paused rebuilding authorizations because of ongoing Indigenous archaeological investigations. But locals insist the province ought to respect Indigenous rights to protect their own heritage instead of trying to control it. Lytton's MLA says people feel forgotten.
They're particularly concerned about the fact that many fires have happened since Lytton, and they watch the rebuild happening in those communities, and they're questioning why they're not rebuilding.
2 people died in the fire in late June 2021, and more than 90% of the village was destroyed. Only one wild-born spotted owl is left in the world, and it lives here in BC. Today, an environmental group was in federal court challenging the Minister of Environment's alleged failure to act quickly enough to protect the endangered species. Joel Ballard has details.
Back in February, it was announced that the federal Minister of Environment, Steven Guilbeault, would recommend an emergency order to stop logging in a 2,500-hectare section of the Fraser Canyon, a crucial part of the endangered spotted owl's habitat. That recommendation didn't come until 8 months later. Now the Conservation Group, Wilderness Committee, and lawyers from EcoJustice have taken the ministry to federal court.
We're hoping to establish a precedent that when it comes to a dire emergency, the federal government has a responsibility to step in and issue an emergency order, and that they can't take the better part of a year delaying while habitat destruction is ongoing.
In court, EcoJustice lawyers argued there was an imminent threat to the owl's habitat, and Minister Guilbeault had a duty under the Species at Risk Act to recommend the emergency order swiftly, so Cabinet would have time to respond before the threats materialized.
This is a very endangered bird. There's only one wild-born left in the wild, and they're over a very, very small area that the BC government continues to approve logging in.
The legal challenge has the support of the Spuzum First Nation, whose territory the owl calls home. The nation has fought for the protection of the species and the old growth.
There's this term no net loss, where if they take some trees here, they can leave other trees there. And we're saying right now, no, the pie is already cut up. There's only crumbs left. We need to make sure the next generation has something.
Earlier this month, the federal government chose not to issue an emergency order, despite Minister Guilbeault's recommendation, adding that collaboration with British Columbia and First Nations is the preferred approach. In a statement, Environment and Climate Change Canada wrote that the minister had fulfilled his obligation under the Act by making the recommendation and concluding the species was facing an imminent threat. The hearing is set to finish on Thursday. Joel Ballard, CBC News, Vancouver.
Tomorrow is the Great British Columbia Shakeout, a time for people, schools, and workplaces to practice earthquake safety drills like the old drop, cover, and hold on. BC lies on the boundary of the North American and Juan de Fuca tectonic plates, meaning we are projected to experience a big earthquake in the years to come. Tony Yang is a professor in the UBC Department of Civil Engineering. He spoke to our Michelle Elliott on BC Today earlier today.
What are your biggest concerns when it comes to our infrastructure here?
Infrastructure? Mm-hmm. We have very rigid building code over here, so I would expect that our building will not have that many collapse. Of course, the new building. The old buildings, of course, they were designed in the older code, so we need to retrofit them to ensure they don't collapse. But my biggest concern is that our building code in Canada focus on the life safety of the people. So in the event of an earthquake, we expected a well-designed building will be severely damaged, but people can get out. But after this earthquake I see in Turkey, having a building which is still standing but not useful need to be demolished will cause a lot of financial losses. Yeah, and we need to make sure we need to start thinking beyond the earthquake. After the earthquake, making sure the water is still running, electricity is still okay, and we can start using it.
You can participate in the Great British Columbia Shakeout tomorrow. Tune in to CBC Radio 1 at 10:19 a.m. to hear an earthquake drill, and you can practice how to be safe. Award-winning photography through a microscope. Our Darius Madavi will join us live next to show us a rodent's optic nerve. You will want to see more of this. Hello to everyone watching our commercial-free live stream. Thanks for being here. A family of Afghan refugees trying to make their way to Saskatoon are now in a perilous situation. They're in Pakistan, where the government is threatening to deport anyone who is there illegally. As Pratush Dayal reports, their family in Saskatchewan is asking the Canadian government to step in.
A sense of relief and excitement as Afghani refugee Nadia Manusha reunites with her family in Saskatoon. We are not showing her face because she fears for the safety of her family back in Pakistan.
They have a very bad situation. Yeah, police did not respect the Afghani people, refugees. They are treating like an animals.
A year ago, her brother-in-law Ghiyasuddin Shehanshahi arrived at the same airport after fleeing Afghanistan. He has been trying to bring 5 family members to Saskatoon. They are all in Pakistan now, but face the risk of deportation to the Taliban.
Illegal immigrants hai, illegal
Pakistan's government has declared that all undocumented Afghani refugees will have to leave the country by November 1st or face deportation. According to the UN Refugee Agency, Pakistan hosts over 775,000 undocumented Afghani refugees.
Because RCC...
That also includes Shehanshahi's family, who have been approved as permanent residents to Canada. Before they could make their trip here, Shehanshahi's father was stopped by the police.
They came to my home, to my parents' home, and they arrested all my family. They put it in the jail and not in the police stations.
It took nearly $5,000 to get them released. They were warned if they were arrested again, they'd be sent back to the Taliban.
We have a lot of chat communication.
Shehanshahi has been reaching out to Immigration, Refugee, Citizenship and Canada, or IRCC, for help, but
RCC is not replying. This is not only my family. Thousands of people asking from RCC is not replying. This is the worst scenario.
Shehanshahi says he has been having many sleepless nights, and so has his sister, who we spoke to from Pakistan but won't identify.
We have a tough situation, and now we are hide in one place, or if anybody knows about us, so we change our place. And I don't know what should we do.
Shehanshahi says Canada needs to help.
RCC says it cannot provide the number of Afghani refugees waiting in Pakistan to come to Canada due to security reasons, but it will continue to work with the government of Pakistan to expedite their movement to Canada. Pratish Dayal, CBC News, Saskatoon.
Here's a new question. Have you ever peeked inside a rat's eyeball? Well, thanks to the Nikon Small World competition, you can. This photo, taken through a light microscope, won the contest this year. To tell us more about it is our science specialist, Darius Madavi. Yes, he does things beyond weather. Darius, that is wild. How did they do that?
Yeah, I mean, what a photo, right? Let's take another look. So what we're looking at here, as you said, Dan, is a rat eyeball. So the black you see at the very back there, that's the optic nerve carrying the signal of whatever the rat is seeing back to the brain. The red is what we call contractile proteins, so they sort of envelop the blood vessels and determine how much blood gets to the eye. In yellow, those are what we call astrocytes. They're sort of one of the immune cells of the eye, of the retina. And in blue, all those little dots, those are all different cells, the center of different cells, the nuclei, that just make up the entire eyeball. So to capture everything requires painstakingly going through each layer. Every single different type of cell, every protein in there has to be tagged with a different fluorescent protein, so they go a different color. They have to be imaged separately and all compiled. So then everything is in focus, and you get the photo like that.
It is incredible. It's actually quite beautiful. Are all the photos this close up and this high res?
This high res, yes, but there's a huge variety in terms of what you're looking at, sort of how, as you said, close up they are. So this is an annual competition to showcase the best in microscopy from every sort of discipline of science. And so if you take a look at this next photo, you can see this is actually the embryo of a mouse. And this is taken using a new technique called super resolution that actually won the Nobel Prize in 2014. So we talked to Dr. Robin Young. She's an assistant professor of biology at UBC Okanagan. And you can, here's what she had to say about how the competition showcases how technology has evolved over the years.
They now have those little things you can add to your smartphone camera that allow you to do microscopes. So that kind of stuff would count. And then it goes all the way up to some of the most advanced technology right now is what we call super resolution microscopy, where sort of effectively they've broken the barrier of what you're capable of resolving with a traditional light microscope.
So if you go to their website at nikonsmallworld.com, you can see all the photos going back to the very first year, 49 years ago, so almost a half century of photos, and you can see how the technology has evolved and how now, thanks to things like super resolution, we can capture more detail than we ever thought possible.
It is stunning. And what is it that makes, for example, this competition so special?
Well, there's a lot of things that really set this apart, but when I talked to Dr. Young, she said that she actually won back in 2011. She came fourth with a photo, and she talked about how this really captures the beauty of science, or the art of science. If you take a look here, you can see the photo that she won with, or came fourth place with, which is a real accomplishment considering how many photos actually get submitted. This was using a fairly new technology at the time called two-electron microscopy, and this is of a fluorescent liverwort, which she actually found right at Pacific Spirit Park, right by UBC, and it's a real testament to the new technology that was being developed. And she said as soon as she saw this photo, she knew she had to share it, and so that's why she submitted it. And this photo she also created, which was an image of distinction that year, and shows one of the reproductive organs of that same liverwort. And here's what she had to say about what winning the competition meant to her.
Scientifically, we worry more about the resolution and the crispness, but the beauty is most microscopists would argue that they also care that it looks good. I've published papers, I've done really cool research, I feel like I've made some marks on the scientific discoveries of the world, but none of that has been nearly as much fun as this one set of pictures I took back in 2010.
So all in all, just a really heartwarming sentiment. She said she looks forward to seeing the Nikon Small World photos get released more than she does the Nobel Prizes announced each year. So if you want to see them, again, you can go to nikonsmallworld.com or keep an eye out at Science World, which typically displays the photos here in Vancouver every year.
Those are incredible, and they are beautiful. Darius Madavi, thanks very much.
Thanks for having me.
A desperate situation in Gaza and more pressure on both the U.S. and Israel to allow aid into the region. Updates are next.
Sophia Loren has been kissed by a number of leading men during her career. What happens when she comes to Vancouver? She gets bussed by an otter. Maybe I'm just envious. Sophia made her appearance at the Hudson's Bay store promoting a perfume called Sophia and a book about her life. Her adoring fans were lined up outside the door, patiently waiting to get a close-up glimpse and a word or two from the star.
I like her acting, and I've always, enjoyed seeing her in movies. I wanted to see her if she really looks like she looks in her films and in papers, and she looks even more beautiful than she is in the paper or in the film.
Sophia will be in Vancouver for the next 2 days, with another autograph session tomorrow. If the lineups stay as long as this one was, she might be here for a week. And there's no doubt about it, her fans love her.
Oh, she's just beautiful. She looks much better in person than on film. Just beautiful. And she's so friendly. I just love her.
I had a date with Sophia to talk to her on this newscast. But alas, something happened. Her PR people got mixed up, and we missed connections. But I'll get another chance. She's going to a party tonight, and they promised we'd finally meet. I wonder if my wife will mind. Bob Gillingham, CBC News.
U.S. President Joe Biden has now wrapped up his trip to Israel. The visit came as charges and countercharges were leveled over who's responsible for a deadly explosion at a hospital in Gaza. Biden supports Israel, but he's hoping U.S. influence can prevent the war from spreading. Chris Brown has details.
By morning daylight, the carnage at the Al-Akhi hospital in Gaza was more fully revealed, but did not answer the urgent question of who to hold responsible. The matter threatened to eclipse Joe Biden's much-anticipated first-ever wartime visit to Israel. The U.S. president quickly laid out where he stood.
It appears as though it was done by the other team, not you.
Biden said U.S. officials backed the conclusions of the overnight investigation by Israel's military.
Hamas checked the reports, understood it was an Islamic Jihad rocket that had misfired, and decided to launch a global media campaign to hide what really happened.
Hagari produced a timeline, satellite images, and revealed what Israel says are intercepted conversations, usually classified, between Hamas militants. But some doubt the Israeli explanation. Dr. Fadel Naim was tending patients at the hospital when the explosion happened, killing up to 500 people, according to local officials, with many victims gathered outside waiting treatment or seeking safety.
You don't accept that this was an Islamic Jihad rocket that...
No. I am not a specialist, I'm not government, but I see some videos from rockets come to Israel from our side. No, we didn't see anything like that.
A key aim of Biden's visit was to provide comfort, sitting as part of Israel's war cabinet, with assurances that America's military might is nearby if other actors, namely Iran and its proxy Hezbollah, decide to help Hamas. He cautioned Israel needs objectives for any upcoming ground offensive or risk triggering a wider regional war, and that its ongoing attacks, which have killed more than 3,300 Palestinians, come with great risk.
Palestinian people are suffering greatly as well. We mourn the loss of innocent Palestinian lives like the entire world.
Wide range operation.
This Israeli political commentator says he understands Biden's caution and Israel may tweak its battle plans, but only to a point.
But it doesn't mean the Israeli army is not going to go into Gaza or it's going to allow Hamas, to continue controlling the Gaza Strip. It's simply impossible.
One possibly significant development from Biden's visit is that Israel says it will now permit deliveries of food, water, and medicine into Gaza. And tonight, Egypt said it will allow the first 20 shipments of aid through its border crossing at Rafah. Chris Brown, CBC News, Jerusalem.
As Chris mentioned, Israel says it will not stop humanitarian supplies from coming into Gaza through Egypt so long as these supplies do not reach Hamas. An aid worker in the West Bank spoke to Early Edition host Stephen Quinn this morning. At that time, he said food, water, and medicine are still desperately needed.
Gaza is not a normal place, meaning that the situation that people were dealing with before the events of the 7th of October, it was already a humanitarian catastrophe. The number of people who live below the poverty line, access to drinking water, the ability to have freedom of movement, it was already a humanitarian catastrophe. Now what we did is we added airstrikes, which in many cases seem to be indiscriminate, killing thousands of civilians at this point, and shutting off water, electricity, fuel. So we have a situation that in the coming days could easily result in tens of thousands of people dying from simple diseases that we haven't heard of in North America for 100+ years. Typhoid, cholera, dysentery.
The blast at the Gaza hospital has triggered growing anti-Israeli and anti-American sentiment in the region. And as Susan Ormiston shows us, organized protests are spreading.
In Ramallah, in the occupied West Bank, shuttered shops, marking a general strike here and 3 days of mourning. Here, Palestinians are resolute. In their court of public opinion, Israel is wholly to blame for the carnage in the hospital explosion Tuesday.
And I didn't sleep since yesterday. You didn't sleep? No, because how can we be normal? How can we sleep? How can we eat? How can we drink water?
Haneen's life at 23 is on hold with this war.
The Israelis say it wasn't them. They say it was Islamic Jihad. It's always like this. They always do this. They said we never did this, but they are the one who did this.
No matter what Israel says or how it defends itself, that it had nothing to do with the hospital strike yesterday, this crowd in Ramallah doesn't believe it. There's calls for protests like this over the next few days.
Already rippling across the Arab world, protests in Tunisia, in Jordan, and Cairo showing support for Hamas. In Lebanon, clashes around the U.S. Embassy, America being drawn in further to the wider conflict. For them, President Biden arriving today in Israel saying it was the other team just proves the U.S.'s complicity.
The first thing is, if we are two teams, and the Americans are on that Israeli team, so what do we have to talk about? He will always be with his team, regardless of what they tell him, regardless of all the lies that Netanyahu is telling him. He's siding by Israel.
It's not lost on the Arab street that the U.S.'s role in this war is expanding.
This is unfortunately hurting the image of the United States. It cannot be a mediator, it cannot be fair, it cannot be supporting international law.
In Ramallah, several clashes, including one where 2 teenagers were shot dead Wednesday, supporting Hamas. Every day that Gaza is pinned down, deteriorating, Palestinians' fury grows louder. And the facts, if unearthed, are effectively still buried under recriminations. Susan Ormiston, CBC News, Ramallah.
Prosecutors today questioned Nathaniel Veltman, the man charged with murder and terrorism-related offenses for killing 4 members of a Muslim family in London, Ontario, with his truck. As Thomas Dagle reports, at issue in court is not what he did, but why he did it. And a warning, some details in this story are upsetting.
Cross-examining Nathaniel Veltman in court today, the Crown Attorney zeroed in on a key piece of evidence found in Veltman's apartment. A lined sheet of paper with various speeds listed and percentages written next to them. The 22-year-old accused said he had done research online about vehicle collisions with pedestrians. Veltman testified he had written down the likelihood that a pedestrian would be killed or injured if they were struck at certain speeds. The prosecutor told Veltman this was you clearly planning on killing pedestrians with your vehicle. From the witness box, he replied, "I wasn't sure what I was going to do, but I was certainly in danger mode." Veltman does not dispute. In June 2021, he used his pickup truck to run over the Afzal family in London, Ontario, because to him they looked Muslim. But in court today, Veltman denied that he did it to intimidate others with the same faith. Now, that may prove to be crucial testimony. The Crown, remember, is trying to show the attack wasn't just first-degree murder, but that it constituted terrorism driven by Veltman's white nationalist ideology. He's pleaded not guilty to the charges. Members of the Muslim community could be heard in the courtroom today sobbing when the attacker testified about speeding towards the Afzals. Veltman said after his arrest, he felt what he described as demented hysteria and a sense of relief as well that he'd gone through with it. The jury is set to hear more evidence tomorrow. Thomas Dagle, CBC News, Toronto.
In Manitoba today, new Premier Wab Kinew and his cabinet were sworn into office. It's a first for Canada. As Cameron McIntosh reports, no First Nations person has served as a provincial premier until today.
Wab Kinew is now Manitoba's 25th premier after a swearing in today unlike any seen before here in Manitoba or any other Canadian province. A ceremony full of Indigenous symbolism and substance.
And we still honor our kuluk every day.
Starting with the lighting of an Inuit lamp. It included Métis dancing, a drum song written specifically for the event, and a Cree prayer. All of it honoring the 7 Indigenous nations who predate the founding of Manitoba. Kinew was sworn in wearing a traditional war bonnet to symbolize leadership. In addition to becoming premier, Kinew is also taking on the portfolio of Indigenous reconciliation in a province with a long history of tension between the provincial government and Indigenous communities. Kinew spoke of his vision for a more inclusive Manitoba.
Today, Manitoba now has a Jewish lieutenant governor, an Anishinaabe premier, a gender-balanced cabinet, and a government MLA team that represents many walks of life from so many regions of this great province. And I believe that this sends a message to every young person in Manitoba that no matter who you are, no matter where you come from, and no matter which barriers you have to overcome on your life's path, that the road to success is open for you.
Manitoba's new cabinet was also sworn in. It is one of the most diverse in Canada. Now, during the election, Canoe ran mostly on healthcare reform, saying he wasn't motivated by becoming the country's first First Nations premier. But given today's ceremony and the structure of his cabinet, it's clear Manitoba's new government is focused on change. Cameron McIntosh, CBC News, Winnipeg.
After the break, a flurry of owl attacks has ruffled many a feather in a BC town. It's even prompted a warning. Stick around for this story.
And when Muhay cocks that lead, you be there for him, okay? Yeah, I'll start us off then.
The music program that once had 5 students now has over 20. So more drums were needed, says Evan Whitestar, the Indigenous advocate with the Mother Teresa Middle School. To get more drums, he applied for a $20,000 grant from a national music education charity called Music Counts.
I can't accommodate the whole school around one drum. But if I have more access to more drums, like what we do now, I could actually reach more students.
The school is getting 11 pre-made hand drums and 20 drum kits, with 2 big drums so far. Whitestar has helped design them.
Once the drums started arriving, it was almost like Christmas. For the past 4 weeks now, every week we've been getting a package delivered, and we just can't wait to open them.
Grade 8 student Trevon Ironchild joined the drum group called the Buffalo Boys 3 years ago, just to hang out with his friends. But now he's proud to know about his culture. Ironchild says it was a big day when the drums arrived at the school.
I seen a new drum come. I said, and I kind of yelled new drum, and then everybody was looking out in the hallway, and everybody was saying, "Oh my gosh, it's so big," and then people were just getting excited over it.
With these new instruments, Whitestar can reach more students with the music and their culture.
Most of the times they get into the building here and they've never been around a drum. They haven't heard the Cree language. They haven't smudged. They haven't had this First Nations experience. And to me, that's heartbreaking because I grew up like that. I grew up doing this. And to bring it into the hallways of an education institute is quite something.
The drummers not only practice at school every day, they're also invited to perform at local events and powwows. And now, with the new drums, they can go even further. Louise Big Eagle, CBC News, Regina.
BC conservation officers are looking into an up-close and a bit too personal social media video of a bear chowing down on some poutine in Whistler. The service says it is not happy about the video taker being that close. In fact, it's opened an investigation, saying it was unsafe to both the bear and the person. It notes feeding a bear directly or indirectly is illegal. A series of owl attacks, meanwhile, targeting people and pets, has prompted the town of Sydney on Vancouver Island to issue a safety warning for a park. The culprit, ruffling feathers in Ray Creek Park, is a barred owl. Town staff are asking people to be careful when walking in the park's trail, especially at dawn and dusk when owls usually stalk their prey.
He came from the walkway, came over and tried to take my hat. I did hear of our neighbor who had to chase the owl away because he had a little wiener dog, and it was coming down to, I don't know, have a look at the dog or whatever.
Experts say this type of aggressive behavior is not usual this time of year. It notes this owl is most likely inexperienced, young, and just looking for prey. Don't feed the bears. Keep away from the owls. Good life lessons, right, Darius?
Very good life lessons, but I love owls.
They're
It's
cool.
hard to stay away.
From a distance, exactly.
From a distance, yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Have your
They're
binoculars,
wise. Yeah, for
then you
sure.
can go see all the owls you want.
There you go.
It's fantastic.
In this weather, though?
Great segue.
Oh.
Thank you. In this weather, maybe not so much. So this is sort of what we can estimate the accumulation of rainfall was on Monday. Technically, this is sort of 5 a.m. Monday to 5 a.m. Tuesday, but that's what Environment Canada does. For reasons, who knows? But you can see here that there's quite a bit of accumulation, especially around the Tofino area on the west coast of the island. Some extremely significant rainfall, up to 90 millimeters, and potentially up to 100 millimeters, but it's hard to say. Now, keep in mind, the nearest weather stations aren't necessarily reporting the same amounts because they aren't exactly where the most significant rainfall came. So this is sort of both an estimate and in some places more accurate than looking at weather stations. Yesterday, though, we had some even more significant rainfall, well over 100 millimeters on some parts of the island. Now, you can see here, the atmospheric river is starting to shift down over those 2 days, and that sort of continued. So today, the most significant rainfall, if we look at this same graphic tomorrow, will likely be even further south, probably around here, just a little bit further south of Tofino on the west coast. So still some significant rainfall coming for the island, including the east coast, which again, rain shadows not usually getting as much, but still significant. And you can see here, if we look at the radar, just how much of that rain was passing over the island. Again, not all of it making its way to the north, not being able to see it on the North Island here because of just our radar coverage, but some extremely significant rainfall passing through as a result of that atmospheric river. Fortunately, it looks like we're coming to an end by tomorrow afternoon. Most of that rain has passed through, no matter which model you look at, although some say morning, some say noon, some say late afternoon. But by the evening, we should be cleared up, and then nothing but cloud over the next couple days before the next system possibly runs through at the end of the weekend. So expect this little bit of rain to pretty much cease in the morning. A few of those showers potentially making their way into the interior, but then that's really the end of it. And here in Vancouver, we just get that little bit of rain, mostly in the morning, potentially on Friday, but I think it's very unlikely. And then on Saturday, we've cleared up. So maybe 2 days of a bit of cloud, a bit of sun to enjoy before the next system rolls in.
That's pretty good.
We'll take it.
Thanks.
Thanks, Dan.
Good things, they say, do come in small packages. And at the grocery store, big packages don't necessarily mean big servings inside. As the CBC's Sophia Harris reports, amid a year of punishing inflation, that disparity is even more apparent.
After Ellen Newell bought 2 boxes of the same cereal for the same price, she noticed something was not the same.
This one's taller, it's skinnier.
The taller box, new packaging. The shorter box, old packaging, being phased out. But taller doesn't mean more. The new box has 12% less cereal.
How could they do that to us? You feel upset, you feel deceived.
It's called shrinkflation, when a company shrinks a product, but not the price or packaging, making it hard to detect.
If I had noticed this in the store, I absolutely would not have bought this box.
Shrinkflation isn't new, but it's getting more attention as Canadians struggle with high grocery prices.
Everything seems to be more expensive now, and by simply reducing the size of their products, people maybe feel like they're being tricked a little bit.
CBC News went grocery shopping and found several cases of shrinkflation where the price hadn't changed. This box of crackers has shrunk by 10%, this mac and cheese by 11%, and this cake mix is now 13% lighter. Often companies say they shrink a product to offset rising costs, but there's a growing call for them to be more transparent about it.
The average person, times are a little tough, and they need to be aware of where their money is going. And if their money's getting them a little less, you're officially getting taxed on your ice cream.
Neil Chohan makes TikTok videos exposing shrinkflation.
Have you noticed that Ben & Jerry's ice cream seems smaller?
This is his latest target, but he applauds Ben & Jerry's for acknowledging online it shrunk its ice cream by 5% to combat higher supply costs.
I think it's a great first step.
This consumer rights advocate says one solution is for Ottawa to mandate companies alert customers when they shrink a product.
They could have a specific label that says that the amount, the quantity has been reduced.
Brazil already makes companies note recent weight changes on product labels. France has pledged to do the same.
We are in solution mode to bring relief to Canadians.
Facing pressure over high food prices, Ottawa says it will investigate shrinkflation, but no action plan as of yet.
The next day, I went back to Walmart and...
As for Newell, when she realized the older boxes had more cereal, she bought several before they disappeared. Sophia Harris, CBC News, Toronto.
After the break, a young BC man shares how he enjoys concerts while using a wheelchair. This is awesome. Stick around.
It's all about the verses. You got their phone number? Do you have the Chainsmokers' phone number? Okay, cool. Drum! Love drum.
Hey, hey. Mama, would you like to be my
No, it's this little Yachty. I love Lil Yachty. He's so cool.
$30,000
braces? Hair?
I just hit Rodeo and I spent like 10 G's. I just did a show.
Clearly, I thought it was a jam. I've never heard this. Cool.
She said, where'd you wanna go? How much you wanna risk? I'm not looking for somebody with some super.
I want something just like this. Maybe a song like this. I want a song like this. It'd be fun to sing in the arena. I want something just like this. Yeah, it's a jam. I like the lyrics. The verses are really cool. Oh. Mom dance. Is this Hall & Oates? Yeah. This is like, his voice is so good though. This is called Maneater, this song. Yeah. It's a great tune. That's a jam. That's a jam.
I do my makeup in somebody else's car.
I like this. Lord.
We ordered different drinks at the same bar.
Never heard this bar.
I know about what you did and I want to scream the truth.
Scream the truth. That's hard to sing. Scream the truth.
She thinks you love the beach, you're such a damn lie.
I love how she doesn't rhyme those two lines. They should go with truth and booth. She says you're such a damn liar, truth. She sounds good saying teeth. Bedroom floor. Nope. Light up floor. I think I like it. I decided just now that I like it. Oh my God. I heard this in the bathroom stall like about 2 hours ago, and I was in a great mood. I went to pee, and this was playing, and it was my first time hearing it with a bathroom acoustics, and I was like, this would sound good in Tokyo, this sounds good in Ibiza, this sounds good in Nairobi. Ed's really got it figured out, and he's nice. And he tours with one person himself. He's probably so rich. Invite me over to the castle.
Somebody like me, come on now, follow
Thank
my
you.
lead. I may be crazy, don't.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
Celebrate the achievements and resilience of women in the workforce with CBC's Michelle Elliott on November 21st at the annual Dress for Success Luncheon. Get tickets and learn more at successluncheon.ca. And stay on top of what's happening where you live with our weekly newsletter. Subscribe today for special programming series, events, and contests at cbc.ca/Vancouver Inbox.
Today's Google Doodle honors a Canadian who paved the way for black women in law. Take a look. Violet Pauline King Henry was the first black graduate of the University of Alberta's Faculty of Law and the first black woman to practice law in Canada after being called to the bar in 1954. She would have been 94 today. The young man from Sycamore said the time of his life at a Billy Talent concert in Kelowna last week. He went crowd surfing in his wheelchair.
Going to a concert in a wheelchair, you kind of have to make a conscious decision between, do I want to get a seat and enjoy the whole show and just see everything that there is to happen and enjoy it from afar, or do I want general admission and be staring at butts and have the few opportunities that I can to go crowd surfing and like play in the mosh pit? And that's usually my choice. Usually people will like lean down and ask me, you want to go up? And then you can try to communicate with people, just like, yeah, that'd be great. Just let me do my breaks. But the best thing to do is to just, and just like emote as much as you can. And people, they hop on the bandwagon way quicker. The majority of people are in a really good mood. It's fun for me, but what it inflicts upon the crowd is nothing short of spectacular.
When you're underneath Brad!
The energy is already high, but then when people are presented with the idea of putting a person in a wheelchair, I do it more for the people in the crowd than myself. The chair and stuff just kind of like textures my interactions with the world, and obviously you're affected by it, but I think I've always been something of a ray of sunshine.
No kidding. Finally, a lack of amenities in a local dog park inspired a Calgary man to take a stand and build some seats. Now there are several handmade wooden benches in the off-leash area. The maker says it's a way to build community spirit by doing something he's already good at.
Up. There you go. There you go. Yeah. People like me and my dog need somewhere to sit. Right?
I had the wood, I had the time, I have the motivation, and there was definitely a need. Well, I decided to build the benches because, I mean, this long stretch of park that we have here doesn't have any, and noticed that a bunch of seniors walk it all the time, and just kind of figured I have scrap of wood and I should build something. People like them, so I built more. Well, we got 6 in total. This one and the one on the bottom are kind of the more fancy ones. Kind of just wanted to make an art piece for the park here, and people like them.
I think that they're great for the community, and they're well built and they're nice looking, and you might as well promote community and being outside.
He just looks at me, you know, like, what are you doing? So I engraved his name on one. Figured, you know, the best way to keep them here without people stealing them is to engrave something on them too, right? You know, you make it more personal. Mostly just time, like you said, labor. Not much cost in material because it was all leftover, so it was kind of nice that way. It really is just a community park, and it deserved something good. It connects 3 communities, 3 communities together. We all kind of walk. Our dogs talk, we know each other by name, we know our dogs, you know, we take care of each other. I get a lot of emails saying thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm very appreciated to just be able to sit down for a minute. They like the arty ones, you know, nice, something nice in the park, you know, something to look at. Something nice in their day, you know, something different.
Thanks for joining us tonight on CBC Vancouver News at 6. You can watch this newscast on CBC Gem, our free app, as well as YouTube and our website, cbc.ca/BC. Tanya Fletcher will have your next local news at 11 o'clock right after the National. Have a good night.